as an accounting junior. I joined a small practice, and I was quite fortunate that because it was small, I got to really know the clients and really know the ins and outs of how the firm worked as well. I was doing the internal management reporting, I was doing sales and marketing by the time I finished up there. So it gave me a really well-rounded perspective of how a firm works. At the time, we were onboarding Xero and starting to use it. And in 2012, I moved across into Xero as one of the first internal account managers in the UK. And I was really fortunate to be there at that part of the journey because it helped me to understand how partner programs are constructed. I got to learn the lessons firsthand on what worked and what didn't. And I spent a good few years there. After Xero, I went to some other software vendors, which was a lot harder than selling when you've got the big brand of Xero behind you. And so I learned lots more lessons there. But what was really interesting during the time at Xero, particularly, is that we ended up with these little pockets of partners that had bought stuff, but they couldn't implement them and they couldn't use them. And so I reasoned that a big part of that was down to behavior change and habit change. And so I started studying change management around 2016, qualified as a change management practitioner in around 2018. And some of those lessons were really valuable and allowed me to provide some great insights to some of the big firms that we work with there, like BDO, BHP, and really start to move the needle in terms of their adoptions. That was really exciting. But what I learned from that is it's really, really hard to scale that sort of capability. And that's often a massive concern for SaaS vendors. Like, how do we do things that scale and grow with us? So in 2021, I started a video production business, which seems like a bit of a left turn from that career path up to that point. But it meant that I then built the capabilities of being able to replicate some of that expertise and make it scalable. And so this session is very much about how I got started with that and how I found that it was useful, and it will be sharing some of that with you so you can go away and do some of your own stuff. But that's my sort of mixed bag of skill set, as it were, and hopefully that can be helpful to you during this session. Part of what I've learned with that is being a visual communicator as well. And so my big purpose shown here, I guess, visually, is that we've got on the left-hand side a huge amount of value. Got vendors and fintech providers that are queuing up to add value to accountants who are the other side of the chasm on the right-hand side. And while messages can get across, you can shout across the chasm. There's ways to do that. You've got events, you've got marketing playbooks and stuff like that. Actually delivering the value of the product is really, really challenging. And some people do that really well, but the avenues are a lot thinner. Like we've already talked about the scalability of these things. And so my big purpose and what I'm trying to do with this webinar and with the other things that I'm doing is build more bridges across this big chasm. So more of this value can get to accountants and they can pass it on to their clients, and everybody kind of has a better life after that, right? Better schools and hospitals because businesses are paying more tax and being more successful, etc. So that's my big mission, to try and get more of that value across. And where I see the big pinch point is around that onboarding and the activation phase, which some people do really well, but doing it well and doing it scalably is really, really challenging. Anyway, enough about the sort of background. Hopefully that explains why I believe I've got the right to talk about this stuff. So the story for video for me starts in around early 2020. I was at a great company called Soldo, and it was a travel and expense app. But unfortunately, what happened was lockdown, and then suddenly nobody was traveling and nobody was expensing anything anymore. So we had a real challenge on our hands, and overnight we went from a team of 5 to a team of 1, and it was just me, which was horrible to see my colleagues go and terrifying that I might be next. But I had to pull myself up by my bootstraps and figure out what I was going to do. And so I calculated that the best use of my time was in talking to partners, being strategic with them and trying to help them find solutions to their problems. So I set about automating everything else. And that then forms the areas that we're going to look at today, the things that I automated that helped me do my best work while I was an account manager in that role. So we'll cover a little bit on what we did around demand gen. So getting people interested, generating conversations around either the problem domain or the product, how I built tools to help me with outreach to potential clients. We're going to talk about how we built structures around onboarding. It's a really, really key point, as I've just mentioned, but I wanted to have onboarding resources for 2 reasons. One as an active and one as a passive. So the passive was about if I was already in a meeting, already speaking to someone, or if I was out, or if it was the evening or whatever, I didn't want a potential new partner to be held up because I wasn't there to walk them through the onboarding process and welcome them as a new partner. Similarly, I knew that there was stuff that I could do better through video, because I could spend 2 or 3 hours making a video that would explain something better than if I was just repeating it over and over and over again. So I wanted to build out a nice self-serve onboarding process, and that's developed as an idea and is a little bit outside the scope of this webinar, but I wanted to have those early assets in there so people could self-serve and still get a great experience. And then the final part is around retention. So we get partners on board, but we want them to stay interested in what we're doing and continue to earn the right to have a conversation and make recommendations. And so it was really important to me to keep drip feeding value as often as possible into that part of existing partners. Being able to do that through an automated process meant that I could then go and have those strategic conversations. I could use my time in the best possible area with maximum leverage to continue to grow the channel. So that's what we're going to cover, how we can add videos in those 3 different areas. Now, there's time for questions and answers at the end of the session. This is being broadcast live on LinkedIn as well as YouTube. So if you've got any questions, either drop them in the chat inside Riverside or on LinkedIn, and I'll try my best to get to them as we go through. So we're going to go through a handful of videos now. We've got 10 videos that I'm going to show you and a few tips on how to make them and what makes them a good asset and why they're useful. So we'll start off with the basic one, which is a generic demo. Probably you will have some of these already. I'm just going to mute this so it doesn't compete with me for audio space. So what people tend to do when they make demos is they'll go through and just show feature by feature and just list them out. And that's a really challenging thing for people to follow. It's much better if you tell a story around a workflow, like what does this do and how does this help them do something else? How does this improve the way that they work? What opportunities does it open up? And that's much more engaging. If you frame it as a story and bring in little anecdotes of what you've seen other people do, it hits a lot harder. Key thing as well with these little demos, especially if they're little videos, is to keep them really short. I know people will go for half an hour, 40 minutes, sometimes an hour demoing products, but if it's in a video format like this, you've got to keep it really short. Now, this is just over 3.5 minutes long, but it's really crucial. I think actually if I made it again now, I'd make it much shorter. In fact, in the next role after Soldo, I was at a company called Satago, and there I started making bullet demos. So they're 60-second demos, really rapid fire, just to get the point across very quickly. And so the way to think about this is it's a pitch, but you've got visual aids going on with it as well. So it's really got to be really, really punchy. And the other thing that you'll notice on this video is it's zooming in and out a little bit. You've got little highlights coming in. And the reason for that is particularly with accounting or finance apps, they can be quite complicated. There's a lot going on. And so viewers might not necessarily know what they should be paying attention to or what they're looking at. And the mouse moving around just it's not impactful enough. And so this is really easy effect to make. Just cropping in, zooming in and out using your editing software can make a big difference to retaining people's attention and keeping them engaged in these demos, but also directing them to the point that you're trying to make. So if you're going to make some of these demos, follow those tips and they should be much more impactful. The next one that we've got is a follow-up demo, and back then I made this using well, I just screen captured from my Mac, the same as the last demo. But you could just use Loom for this now. But the purpose of this is really just following up after a call with someone when you've done discovery. Say, look, I get what we've talked about. Here are the things that we discussed, and here's how the product can fix it. The reason it's useful to sort of redo that demo is because in the call, I'd have been going through this, but the customer prospect would have been cutting in with questions, and I want them to be able to do that. So I'd come back and record it again afterwards with a nice clean flow rather than stopping and starting and jumping around. The other reason this is really useful, and this is where the change management stuff comes in, is recognizing that the person that I've demoed to isn't the person that's necessarily going to make the decision. They're my sponsor within that organization, but they've then got to go and relay that message to other people. So what I'm trying to do with this follow-up video is just make it nice and easy for that person to relay on the value as easy and quickly as possible. I'm making the job of them as simple as I can to keep the things moving forwards, because they're not a salesperson. They don't know the product as well as I do. And if I can make it easy by giving them this asset, then happy days. But we make sure when we do this, we stick to exactly what we talked about. Don't be tempted to broaden out and go, oh, we've got this thing and this thing and this thing. It's all about really hammering the point that you've had on the call, and it becomes quite a nice memory aid then later when you next catch up. We go, okay, we talk about this. This was before the time of note takers, so you maybe replace that benefit with a note taker now. But these were really, really useful. Next up, we've got the use cases. So I spent a bit of time speaking to a couple of our accounting partners that had specialisms to understand a little bit more about specific industries and the pain points that they encountered. And I'll use that information to then build these use case videos. And the point of these is to go through a very directed, quick demo, I suppose, of how this product fits for this industry. So you're taking a lot of the thinking out of the process for the person on the other side of it. Often what we do with demos and use cases like this is we'll say, right, here's what we can do. And now you've got to figure out where that fits. And the customer's got to do work and they've got to think it through. With this, you're just paring it down to the most relevant stuff for that particular industry. That became really useful then to go and target firms with that specialism. So I could drop this on an email. I could send it on a LinkedIn message and say, look, like we're doing some work with, in this case, agencies. We've learned a lot from the clients that we've got. I know that you deal with agencies. Would you be open to a chat about it? And that can become a really nice beachhead then for a land and expand motion into that firm. You may not finish with agencies, but you start with them and then expand the use case out. So that's quite a nice way to get relevant conversations started. Key thing is to keep it short. So again, like the other videos, this is 3.5 minutes. Again, with the benefit of a couple of years of experience on top of this, if I did this again, I'd probably make it even shorter and try and park some of the stuff for a specific conversation. But yeah, a couple of minutes tops. The next one in demand gen, and the final one for demand gen is thought leadership. And I really, really hate this term, but I don't have a better way of phrasing this quickly that people understand. But the idea with these was we created a very short series of cash flow tips. And the point for that was that we knew around lockdown that people were worried about furlough, they were worried about laying staff off, they were worried about loads of things. Accountants were getting calls every day from clients. And so travel and expense and cards weren't necessarily the thing that they were focused on. They were focused on cash flow, and that sat within our domain of expertise. So what we started to do was have conversations, create the content, and then try and target relevant conversations with that. So be part of that conversation. And then once things calmed down a little bit, once things had got back to some semblance of normality, your name was still in people's minds, right? Because you were seen doing something useful. The other sort of side benefit of doing this is you're then seen with people that are really respected, and you sort of get that brand attachment with them as well, and that sort of halo effect of benefiting from other people's brand, particularly if you're fairly new and unknown in the market. It's a really, really nice way to start to build some traction for yourself. And then the other thing, which is more of a tactical benefit of this sort of content, is that you can reach out cold to someone. They don't have to be a customer or a partner of yours to engage with you in making this content. And rather than saying, hey, I'm from Soldo in this case, do you want to talk about travel and expense stuff? Are you interested in a chat? You can say, hey, look, I'm making this series to help small businesses get through some of the challenges around COVID. Would you be willing to come on, have a quick chat with me about how you're dealing with your clients, what advice you're giving, blah, blah, blah. And it's quite a nice way a softer way to start a conversation with someone. So as a direct account management tactic, it can be quite nice. Now, back then, podcasts were around, obviously, but they weren't as big as they are now. You'd probably do this in a podcast rather than in a video series. I mean, it's arguable. You could probably do them as both, like post it as a podcast, even though it's a video. But this was a really, really nice way to get some initial sort of momentum going. Cool. Onboarding. So once we've got some leads on, we want to make sure that they stay on, right? So they go through the trial, they become a customer, and they start moving towards activation, which is where I wanted to spend most of my time focusing. So I started making these welcome videos. And the point was that when someone signed up as a partner, they'd get a video from me looking far younger than I was now. My last few years have been, have been tough with COVID and whatnot. I look very young there. But this gives them a brief introduction of what we're trying to do, what the product is about. And it identified I identified a key pain point in getting partners going, which is they needed to go through KYC. That was because we gave them a free Soldo card. So sometimes they didn't like that. It was an extra step. And so I took a lot of time in this video to explain why we needed to do that, and showed them through some product snippets what they needed to do and guided them through the process. As I mentioned a bit ago, that it was really important to try and automate this process as much as possible in case I wasn't around. But also, what you'll find with an accounting channel is sometimes you'll get people that just want to give it a look and they're not that interested in doing anything significant with you. And at a point when you're quite lean on resource, you need to really filter those people and give time to the people that really need it and are going to go forwards with you in a serious way. So this allowed me to say, look, here's the first couple of videos, get through these, and then we'll have a chat and decide how you want to work. One of the options was sort of a self-serve partner program where it's more an affiliate link and things like that. But again, that's something for another day. It was also a better use of my time to just record this once and not have to keep sharing the same basic information over and over and over again. It's a really, really nice time-saving exercise to do this. And as I mentioned, it guides them to the next action. So doing the KYC, this is mostly me talking, but there's some product stuff in there as well, just guiding them through those steps. So yeah, identify an issue in the onboarding process and then try and smooth that out as much as you can with video assets. Once they're on board, they need to know how to use the thing and start to get benefit from it very quickly. And so what I found was that although we had a really nice knowledge base with loads of information in there, short, quick videos on key tasks that we knew that they needed to do was really useful. So in this, I've just screen captured it from my PC. It's not as flashy as the other ones because they're already on board. They're looking for information, so I don't need to work as hard to keep their attention because they're actively looking for this. And we can keep it quite short, 1.5 minutes. And in this video in particular, you'll see at the bottom here, I've broken this down into chapters. And I think that's really important for tutorials because people are looking for a specific thing. Like, I don't know if you're similar to me, but when you're trying to fix a software problem or something like that, you go on and Google it or you find something on YouTube, you just want to skip to the bit that shows you exactly what you need to do for your next step. You don't necessarily, even if it's only 1.5 minutes, you don't necessarily want to sit through all of that. So breaking it down into chapters is really helpful. But this was very, very tactical, very much like, here are the things that you need to do. One tip on this for deciding what to show in tutorials is I spoke to our head of customer support and got them to give me a list of the top 10 support questions that they get from new partners and just started making the videos on them to sort of preempt those questions so it wasn't as frustrating for them. And then just put that in a pack and said, look, here's 10 things you need to know when you sign up as a partner. But those product tutorials, nice and short, very to the point, very, very useful. It's also quite good from an efficiency point of view as well, because it sort of bats away some of those mundane and regular questions that you'll tend to get. So product tutorials. Next step on from that, and this is where some of the change management and some of the accounting experience comes in, is workflow tutorials. I strongly believe that when we're selling SaaS solutions, we shouldn't be selling a product, we should be selling a better way to work or a new workflow or an opportunity to achieve new things. And that often extends beyond just your product's kind of jurisdiction, I suppose. So starting to create workflow tutorials, so showing off things like, in this example, how we get stuff into Xero is quite useful because we're trying to demonstrate how this fits as part of a wider process. And by showing other products that they're already used to, things that they're familiar with, it starts to help embedding that product into their existing workflows. They can see where it fits. And so that's really useful because if you've got a product that's fairly adjacent to an existing process, it's really easy for that to just get forgotten or for it to drop off. So targeting, trying to get that embedded in the workflow as part of that onboarding process is really critical to make sure that you stay on board with them, make sure they stay as a sticky customer. So when you're thinking about workflow tutorials, just ask yourself what tasks come directly before and directly after what your product does. So how do you get data in? In this case, it's getting data out into Xero and continuing their workflow afterwards. So have a think about that, and that can give you some nice ideas for coming up with workflow tutorials. Retention. I'm going to hammer through these now because we're sort of getting towards time, but it's always really key when you're an account manager that you want to keep earning the right to engage with partners, because it's really challenging if you've got not a great deal of interest in stuff to say and you ring a partner, you're like, can I have a catch up? Oh, well, no, I'm busy. Like, what do you want? You need to give me something. So if you're constantly looking at things that you can drip feed in terms of value, it's really helpful because you can just send this. You can go, look, let's have a catch up. There's a few product updates that have come out. I want to talk you through them. here's a quick sneak peek, but let's have a look at how this fits for you and how you might use it. Love to get your feedback. You've suddenly got a bit more purpose to open that conversation up. The other thing this is really useful for, and we'll touch on this in the next video as well, is having something constantly to be on your LinkedIn feed, for example, as an account manager. The reason that's useful is because if you want to start doing outreach on LinkedIn to people and potential new accountants and bookkeepers as partners, well, if they look at your feed and there's nothing relevant on there, it's going to be a much more difficult sell to connect with you. Whereas if they look at it and you've got loads of useful information on there, loads of tips, you're showing that you're caring for your partners, it's much more likely that they're going to accept it and engage with you. So product updates are really, really good. Let me just back up and do that again. There we go.
How's it going, everyone?
So this is mostly me talking, and the reason for that is because I want to tell the story around the update more than talk about the actual functions. Big mistake I see people making when they're talking about product updates is they approach it from the point of view of this is what the products can now do. Whereas I think a better way is talking about, well, this is what our customers can now do because we've enhanced this thing. So I wanted to talk about the story. How does this affect them? How does it affect the workflow? What does it now enable them to do? So I was talking rather than showing product. The other reason that I'm not showing a lot of product is because we've said we want to be valuable to partners and we want to add that. But what was really critical was trying to get these out before the main product announcement goes out. And this is coming back from feedback that I had from partners, but knowing what it was like in practice, is that if a client's on some software and the accountant gets informed at exactly the same time the client does, if the client's got a query, they're going to go to the accountant or the bookkeeper, and they've only just found out at the same point. So the risk is that the accountant is seen as being behind the client. Whereas I wanted to make sure these have gone out at least a couple of days before the update, so the partner has the opportunity to stay ahead. I didn't want to embarrass them or put them in a position where they were gonna struggle based on when we release stuff. So often I did that when it was sort of pre-release, just talked about the update and then sent it out from there. Quick tips are a really, really useful tactic as well, particularly on personal branding and growing your presence on something like LinkedIn. So in this one, we're just talking about quick applications of the product, quick tips, quick useful things that we can use. So as I said, good for building the brand. It's useful for existing customers, as we've already explored. Just showing that you're drip feeding value all the time is really, really, really helpful. And it shows that you care about your customers. You're not just there when you want them to buy something. You're there when you want them to continue to get value out of the product as well. But there's also the chance that this will pique some interest of some prospects that might come across this on LinkedIn. It's just like a little fishing line into the ocean. You might get a little bit come back from it. Oh, I'm kind of interested in credit searches. Like, can you tell me what you do? So that's quite useful from that perspective. This is really short. It's like 30 seconds long. It's meant as social content. It's going to be fairly digestible and fairly kind of it'll be gone quite quickly up the feed, right? It's not meant to stay around as an evergreen asset, but it's quite helpful to get those out and just show that you're on the pace with the partners. This next one is if you're going to do anything, I'd recommend doing this. And this comes from, I guess, all of the experience from the SaaS sales, the accounting, and the change management is enablement resource. And so the point of doing enablement resource is recognizing the fact that as an account manager, I'm selling into my sponsor in accounting firm, right? So someone there, their champion that's going to deal with this. They've then got to sell that idea to the client managers, who've then got to sell this to the clients, who in this case have then got to sell that to their staff to sign up and log into this stuff. So you've got layers and layers and layers of stakeholders there, which I don't have direct control of. I can't sit on a phone line with end users and talk them through this, otherwise I'd have no time. So starting to develop this enablement resource that you can then give to your partner to then give to their customers further down the track was really useful, and partners really love this. So there's a little series of these, but it's just taking the pain out of it, particularly stuff like how to invite your accountant into your SaaS products, like great content. And it's keeping your partner at the center of the conversation as well. It's what the accountant wants to be. They don't want to feel like you're going around them and sort of circumventing them, but giving your accountant these resources is great. It takes the pain away from them. And I always felt that I should be part of the value proposition as I'm selling this. As a salesperson, I should be showing up. I should be adding value during this process. And it becomes a differentiator then, right? If I'm going to support you better than the competitor, that's a reason to come with us and not with them. So these are great. And I'd really strongly recommend thinking very carefully and really putting some effort into some enablement resources to support your partners in telling your story on your behalf. So those are the 10 resources. I've gone through those fairly quickly. Sorry if I've chatted a little bit too fast for you, but there'll be a recording available. You can go back and watch it if you want to. Those are the 10 resources, right? So 10 videos that I definitely felt helped me grow that channel. We sort of finished at the end of 2020 at about 90% of target, which was amazing because that target was set the year before, right? Before we knew COVID was coming around. So we didn't quite get to where we wanted to be, but with all the challenges, we still grew it really, really well. And so I definitely put stock in these as a big enabler for me to have been able to achieve that. The challenge that you might have watching this is thinking, well, that's great, there are like 10 things there, but where do we start? Like, how do we prioritize that? So a couple of tips for you. So I would go through your existing process all the way through from like leads to signing up for trials to then actually onboarding and becoming a customer to then activating and doing the thing that you want to do, whether it's adding clients or using the software, and then looking at retention as well and looking at the areas where this falls down. Where are the gaps? Where are the bits that people fall off? And then consider putting some digital video resources in those gaps to try and support the process and make it a bit stronger. Aside from that, I'd have a look at where your team are really stretched. So if, like me, when I was a sales manager, you found that your reps or account managers are spending a ton of time doing the same demo over and over and over again, that's a great opportunity to automate that, get it into a video. They can then send out ahead of a meeting and then have a strategic conversation rather than spend 40 minutes demoing and answering the same questions over and over. Really useful as well for customer success teams. We tend to find that they get roped into a lot of demo stuff and going through basic product things. In fact, I was talking to a fairly major general ledger provider recently. We sent them a proposal and it was a chunky invoice or chunky quote to go and film for a couple of days, get loads of demos and stuff captured and then give them back to them. But the amount of time they were spending delivering the same demo meant that they would see payback on that or a return on investment within a month or within a week if you looked at the opportunity cost. So it's really powerful to look at how can you take regular tasks that account managers and customer success managers are doing and get them into a video asset to automate that process. Is a really useful area to look at. You don't have to spend a lot of money doing this either. Like, I made these things with some basic kit and actually in some respects it's probably overkill for what you might need, but you can absolutely make these. So I had obviously a MacBook. It's my PC of choice. I had the camera that I use, which is the one that you're looking at me through now, is a Canon 90D, probably a little bit overkill. You could probably record those talking to camera bits on your phone. You don't necessarily need a camera like that, but that's what gave that crisp sort of quality on those clips. That's a Rode Video Mic NTG, which is basically a shotgun mic. That's what I used at the time, but I'd recommend getting something like a Rode Wireless Go, a little clip-on mic. Like I've got one just here, which is what you're hearing me through now. Much easier to use, just a little wireless thing. But good audio is really, really important. If you've got poor audio, then you're going to lose people and it's quite distracting. So if you're only going to buy one thing, get a mic. And a little light's really useful as well. I'll show you quickly. I've got a light, one of these on here. That's with it off and that's with it on. And you can see there's a bit of separation behind the background with me. My camera's just reset. But a good light source is really important to make sure you look well presented, because when you're doing these videos or you're giving demos one-on-one, people feel the care that you've put into it because you're doing it one-on-one. When it's a video asset that you can then send to many people, if you do a poor job on that, it just feels careless. So when you're providing these assets one-to-many, you want to put a little bit more effort into how it looks, so that people see that there's kind of value in it and they appreciate that. Final thing is I edited all this stuff on a piece of software called Final Cut Pro. So it's not all done with AI. It's just a basic editing software. Some people use Premiere Pro, which is fine, does a similar thing. Final Cut, you pay for it once rather than a subscription. So that's what I got into and that's what I use. There are other tools that you can use now, but that's the basic kit that I had. And so you don't need to spend a lot of money on this. You just really need probably a mic, something to edit on, something to capture your screen on as you saw the product stuff, and a camera to talk into. And if you can get a light, then great. So it's not a high bar for you to be able to do this and start to improve the experience your partners are getting from you. So that was fairly rapid. We've got to the end there, and there's time for questions. So if you've got any questions, please pop them through. I'm happy to answer. But while I'm waiting for those questions to come in, the stuff that I mentioned earlier about these onboarding processes is what I really care about. I think we can make a massive difference in this space if we can improve that. And so that's what Nomad Consulting is doing. Nomad Video is helping to create these assets. So if you want any help on doing any of these things, of course we're here to help. But it should be possible for you to do them yourself. Like I managed it, so you should be able to. The other thing I'm really interested in at the moment is looking at onboarding processes. And so if you're finding that you're getting accountants on, they're not moving forwards and you don't quite know why, then it might be worth having a chat about your process and having a quick health check conversation to see if there's some things that you could be doing to make that easier for them. Right, have a quick look, see if there's any questions, and then we'll wrap up. Can't see any questions just yet, so hopefully I've answered everything brilliantly and it's not left any questions. But if you do have anything that you want to ask, please do drop me a note. More than happy to chat about this all day. I love this stuff, very passionate about it. But yeah, thanks for listening. I hope this has been useful, and hopefully